Okay, so we've been telling the story the last couple of weeks about our elderly couple. The old guy who had a stroke came into the ER to see me about weakness and altered mental status. And the long and the short of it was, yeah, he was a little dehydrated. We gave him some antibiotics for urine infection, but the real issue was he was depressed. His wife had tried all these things, and he was still depressed, and he just wasn't eating, and he was not the man he was before he had had these health issues. And when I walked into that room, I mean, part of my brain is, evaluating him and running through what are the possibilities and, doing all that medical stuff. But really, I just got this sense. I was like, God, this is Gramps. I mean, this is Graham and Gramps. Like, this is my own grandfather. And so that's why I try to sit down with her and lean in and just be honest, really on a more emotional level about what this is really about, which is loss and grieving. That the man that he was is no longer there, and gosh, it's hard for me to even say this as I say it, but he's not coming back, And even as I say that it's it's just sad, and it's hard. My own grandfather was a great man, Lawrence Ray II. I'm the fourth. He was a pilot, and he made millions of dollars and spent millions of dollars. I've written about this before, but the time we spent fishing, and I was really lucky to have him in my life. And he was just such a great man. He loved my grandmother, and even to this day, I interviewed her once a year or two ago for her 90th birthday, and was asking her all these questions, and it just didn't take long before she started talking about him, and that was like the highlight of her life, was her relationship with him and their 5 kids and all of that. But he had 2 things happen. He had atrial fibrillation and irregular heartbeat because he had a valve screwed up because he got an infected tooth. Infection went to the valve, screwed that up. He got an irregular heartbeat. And he was high risk to throw these clots. So long of the short of it is, he was a risk taker. He was on all of these kind of experimental meds, and he kind of pushed it too far, and he had a stroke. But then the big one was he had a cardiac arrest, which is where his heart stopped beating. 13 minutes, and she did chest compressions on him and all this stuff. And the long or the short of it is, when you want to talk about moments, that was a moment. When he went down that day, he never recovered, and he was never the same. And part of him died. Part of him really did. His personality was so different after that. I mean, he was like, this was him, when he was even 60-something, he was flipping the bird and cussing people out and trying to start fights with 20-year-olds. I mean, none of that is advisable good behavior, but he was just a mover and a shaker. And then after that, the dude he didn't talk much, and he got around with a cane, and he was just so different. And that was really hard for us to accept and say goodbye to, and God, it still is, when they're not there. So when this woman brought her husband in, it just made me think of, this particular patient had been with her husband for 15 or 20 years, where she had been the caregiver and had been doing this. I mean, that's an incredible amount of time. Let's call it what it is. Like, that's a sentence, God, till death do you part. I really admire her. My grandma did the same thing. I don't remember how long the second version of Gramps was around, but I want to say it was like 15 years. It was a long time. That dude did not die. Partially died that day, personality changed, but he was a survivor, and he did. And so the thing I want to talk about I could talk about him forever, but the thing I really want to talk about is how this woman brought her husband in, and he was basically depressed and just not thriving. My grandma, this was between college and med school for me. I had taken a year off, And part of what I did in that year was I was one of my grandfather's caregivers. So I would go over and take care of him, and I would do it all. I mean, I cooked for him, helped him get in his clothes. I changed him, like, sorry, I don't mean to be telling you this, but I would put the guy in the shower and bathe him and all this stuff. Like, kind of humiliating to have your grandson do that for you, but the main thing that I wanted to do was like try to find something he was excited about, just that we could do together, and just like some kind of happiness and joy in this shell of a man that he used to be. So I tried all these things. He used to be a pilot. I took him to these video games, and I would try to find like these airplanes he could fly. And, the simulators are just nothing compared to the real thing. And that didn't work. Bought like these model planes, and I was like, oh, this will be fun. We'll put together a plane together. Well, the pieces are so small. Like his arthritis, he shook so much, he couldn't do it. He got frustrated. I'll never forget, like I buy the set, we start putting it together. He couldn't do it. He got frustrated. And even though he was kind of trapped in that body, like he got frustrated in that moment, and then he went back to bed and he went to sleep and took a nap. Like I could see the emotion in him. Like there was still, this is what I think, there was still enough of him in there that he knew that he wasn't the guy before. And that was the hardest, that was just the hardest thing. And so I tried like everything I could think of just to bring this guy some joy. And there were two things in the end. Some things never die. The guy liked to eat. So we would just go out and eat. Go eat, what do you want, Gramps? I want a steak this big. Go get a steak for lunch or whatever. And the other thing was, and I'm just going to say it as it is, like he still liked the ladies. So I would take him to the mall, and we would walk around the mall, and we would just talk to all of the lovely women in the mall. And I feel like I have to apologize. It's true. And I was like, is this a little questionable? Yeah, but this is my grandfather, and we're having a good time, so that's what we're going to do. I mean, I didn't take him to a strip club or anything. Like, would I do that now? Yeah, probably I would. Like, knowing what I know and what would bring him some kind of joy. I don't care. Like, I don't care if it's right or wrong or whatever. Like, I would have done anything to bring this man whatever joy I could have in that moment. But the point of it was, like, the dude was just depressed and limited, and that was life at that time, So anyway, that just really made, when this patient came in, and him and her husband, and I think about my grandma, like she did that for so long, and how hard it was on her and the whole family, and God, she really just loved him, just so impressively. It makes me wonder, like, am I going to do that for somebody someday? Like, would I do the same thing? God, I hope so. I mean, what a great example. But I really could empathize with this family and woman as she came in. So there you go. There's my story. Yes, I would have taken my grandfather to a strip club. I would have done it. I'll stand here and say that because it would have brought him some joy and yeah. But the loss and the grief process, sometimes it's there the whole time. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed these stories. I'll see you next time.